Our guests are still here for the next 1 hour. Senior Counsel Abdikadir Mohamed, who was the first chair of the Parliamentary Committee for the Implementation...
Oversight.
The committee...
CIOC.
The Constitution Implementation Oversight Committee of the National Assembly then. And before that, the Parliamentary Select Committee on Constitution Review that vetted and approved the appointment of the Committee of Experts on Constitution Review. The CEO of that Committee of Experts on Constitution Review is Dr. Ekuru Aukot. Interviewed.
Hired,
basically.
That's true.
I thought it was the National Assembly that hired.
That's true.
Okay.
So the chair, the then CEO of the Committee of Experts, Dr. Ekuru Aukot, is also here with us. He is our guest. Now, Siti, remind the world. This week the proverbs have been from the People's Democratic Republic
of Algeria. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And today's proverb is a fairly straightforward one.
The
absent always has a justification.
The absent always has a justification.
Yes.
All right. Senior Counsel Paul Moita, where is your client? Mr. Speaker, I also don't know. I'm trying to trace my client. The absent always has a justification.
Yes.
After 5 p.m., my client has been taken ill. He's in hospital. The absent always has a justification. Let's head back into this issue.
Yeah.
We have two very, very strong schools of thought here. And the reason why we invited you gentlemen is to look at the spirit, because you were there when the Constitution was being drafted and it was being discussed. So the spirit of the Constitution and the letter that we see in the Constitution today. Senior Counsel Abdikadir Mohamed says, the spirit of the Constitution is that impeachment is a political process and it should be left there. Political process, it ends there. You, Dr. Ekuru Aukot, you say, the spirit and the letter of the Constitution are merging here because the spirit of the Constitution in totality is everybody deserves justice, a right to be heard, and they deserve some arbitration and fairness. And therefore, even this political process should still be subjected to a judicial process.
So, for me, I think the best way to describe it is to call it a legal political process. Okay? It's a legal political process because at the time of making any constitution in any country, it's a political process.
Yeah.
But the moment you pen it down and now becomes the highest law in the land, that's why we call it the highest law in the land. The constitution is the highest law. So that even when you read Article 2, for example, any law or any rule or that is inconsistent with the constitution is null and void from the very beginning. So once it's now concretized to become that law, the social contract, as we call it, then it becomes the highest law in the land. Any law that contradicts, so anything that you do that contradicts that constitution, then is a nullity. And that's why, yes, you can try Gachagua from your political perspective, but try him within the rigors of the law. That because you are applying the law, you are saying, I've accused this man of undermining the president. Where is the evidence? Then you are going into the Evidence Act that's passed by the same parliament. You know, if you are saying that he is undermining devolution, give us the evidence. And that is a matter of legality. Now, you cannot only just say that the political process closes an avenue for somebody to seek legal intervention. It does not. Because the same way you challenge a political process by way of, election petitions. Election petition is a consequence of political process. But we end up in court because to say you stuffed the ballots, you stole the ballots, there was this and that, So it is not watertight that, the process of impeachment actually ends up at the Senate itself. Because if the trial was shambolic, as we saw, if the mover of the motion himself could not even substantiate his claims, then there has to be recourse to me, because otherwise then what are we ushering in if we say let everything just be political, especially since we have already established the character and nature of our politics in Kenya is so shady. It has been commercialized, it's manipulation. You have members of parliament who admitted that they were paid to sign this thing on the promise that one of their own will be the deputy president. Now, really, that is politics. But does it take away the legality of it? It does not. And so that's my point number one. The second point I want to make, Latiff, is this. There is a misinterpretation on the time frame for the impeachment of the deputy president when the Senate sat. Now, there is, going back to the question you're pushing, the spirit of it. What would have been the spirit of actually impeaching this man? Taking into account the importance of this office, as I've already established, right from when President William Ruto sat down and said, who can actually be my deputy? So he does a careful interrogation and selection of the people around him.
2 days of drama in Karen.
And whatever.
It's Rigiji.
And then I said, it's Rigiji. Why Rigiji? Because he attaches importance to that person who is going to deputize him. But we also know it's because he believed that he will bring a block vote from now the Murima that has been shaken. I think has been moved. Not Jaguzo lakini imesongeshwa kidogo. So that is the importance. So now, when you are going to impeach this person by dint of Article 145, Sub-Article 5, so you are saying that initially, senators ought to be wiser people and say, I think let's not rush this matter because Kenya is not in a state of emergency. It's not like Kenya will collapse if we don't impeach Gachagua. So what we have done, wisdom ought to have reigned on the members of the Senate and even members of Parliament to have begin. First of all, they should have interrogated this allegation. But now that we have moved to the Senate would have said, listen, I think let's be very careful on our actions. Can we subject this to a committee of the Senate, the 11-member committee of Senate, who constitutionally have got 10 days that were supposed to have lapsed by the time the charges were read, lapsed on Saturday. Now, the misinterpretation I'm seeing is that when the Senate now took over this matter, instead of putting a committee, they gave themselves the 11 days, which is not.
Let me read the Constitution.
Yeah.
Article 145.
Article 5.
Let me start with 3. Within 7 days after receiving notice of a resolution from the Speaker of the National Assembly, the Speaker of the Senate shall convene a meeting of the Senate to hear charges against the President. What does that mean? That from the moment Speaker Moses Wetangula notified Speaker Amason Kingi of the decision of the National Assembly, Amason Kingi had 7 days to notify the members of the Senate.
First of all, Wetangula has 2 days to notify.
Okay.
He must notify within 2 days of the decision of the National Assembly.
Yes.
And then 7 days.
And then 7 days within which to convene a meeting of the Senate to hear the charges. The Senate by resolution may appoint a special committee comprising 11 of its members to investigate the matter.
Yes.
4. A special committee appointed under Clause 3B, the one I've just read, shall investigate the matter and report to the Senate within 10 days whether it finds the particulars of the allegations against the President to have been substantiated. The President, here, the Deputy President, shall have the right to appear and be represented before the special committee during its investigations. If the special committee reports that the particulars of any allegation against the President have been substantiated, further proceedings shall not be taken, have not been substantiated, further proceedings that shall not be taken. If the special committee finds that they've been substantiated, the Senate shall, after according the President and the Deputy President the opportunity to be heard on the impeachment charges, vote 2/3, blah, 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 out. So here, it's the issue of the days start coming in because it appears after the Constitution introduces the special committee, it goes on further with as if it's a special committee that's sitting. It doesn't tell us if the Senate does not resolve to appoint a special committee, do these days apply or do they not?
It's not clear. And I think that's where now your question comes in. What then ought to be the spirit? If the letter is not clear, I mean, in constitution making, we always have the letter and the spirit of the law. If the letter is not clear, then we go to the spirit. And now the spirit now takes us to the importance, the fundamentals about these offices. The way in which you see the Rigathi Gachagua impeachment was rushed, you can actually see the choreography. The idea was remove this man by whatever means possible. And that's why the calendar of Parliament has even been changed today to sit today on what they call priority, I think priority basis. A priority sitting.
There's a recess coming up, and there's a lot
we
of
never. No. You see, Eric, I hope you're not bidding for the National Assembly. But listen, when we had a disaster, the floods disaster in this country, our parliament never convened to talk about how do we manage the disaster management in this country.
Yeah.
We saw homes were being swept, people were dying.
Yep.
Parliament never sat in its wisdom.
Yeah.
But now, in their wisdom or lack of it, in the impeachment of Gachagua, let's change our calendar. We sit on a Friday, and
Two sessions.
In fact, I wish our parliament was so diligent, so hardworking, like the way we saw it in the last couple of days, to actually address the problems of this country.
I get you. Back to the spirit. In the spirit here, if the Constitution says that the Senate may, by resolution, appoint a special committee comprising of 11 members, and then thereafter we go into, then the committee shall sit, the committee shall have this number of days, and then the committee shall present its report, and then the Senate shall consider. Right? In the absence of this committee, it's not clear then what happens. Can we say then the spirit is that if the Senate does not appoint a special committee, it resolves to be a committee of the whole House, then the same still applies?
Well, it's an arguable case. But for me, if you look at talking about the spirit, what would have been the best way for us as a country to actually handle these allegations against the deputy president, the second in command in our country? I think the spirit for me is not to rush it the way they have done it. The spirit for me is not to go ahead and vote, looking at, for example, the person who petitioned it, looking so miserable, cannot even answer his questions, straightforward questions, So I think for me, there we lost the spirit of the Constitution. We lost the spirit of why we constitutionalized this office, why we said, let there be one ticket of a president and his running mate. We lost that spirit. And what is worrying me most, CT, is that this impeachment of Gachagua has actually set a very poor benchmark on impeachment. It has actually entrenched a very low threshold. I'm hoping now going forward, we are going to have an avalanche of impeachments based on this nature of because this is now the president. Today I can wake up.
City keeps saying they have set in motion something they may not.
And that's not bad, by the way.
Why?
That's not bad.
Abdi, but today I can wake up, Abdi. Wait, give me a second. Today I can wake up and say I don't like Abdi. I just concoct some charges, whether substantial or not. Is that really how we want to govern our country?
No. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I like what they have done, but if we can impeach, so put it this way: if we were to use that standard, majority of high office holders will be impeached.
Yeah.
And we all agree that the majority of our high office holders actually should be impeached. So the fact that standard is been, the eyes of the country have been opened to that accountability process, in my opinion, is not a bad thing.
Everything you're saying is theoretical.
Yes.
What we should have, what we ought to have. But when you say it's what we would like to have, I disagree. Because what we are seeing is what we prefer to have. If we haven't challenged the politicization of everything, the letter of the law, the spirit of the law, and the politicization of it is what has taken center stage. It is what we have accepted. I am looking at everything that we have done with regards to understanding the Constitution and the constitutionality of what this whole process is supposed to be.
And
the options exist, but what do we choose time and time again?
And you're so right. I think that's really the point. The point is our processes from the get-go have been very poor and very politicized, and even the basis of our politics has been colored by a lot of things that are not good. Now, for example, members of our parliament, we all agree, are not the best products. How did they come about? They didn't fall from the air. We voted for them.
And they're Kenyans.
And how did we vote for them? Probably because some paid some people, some were because of ethnic backgrounds or regional backgrounds or a lot of other things. If we were to inquire the way we are inquiring very critically, and it's an important inquiry as to what the coloring of the decision by the Houses of Parliament were yesterday, if we were to follow that to its logical conclusion, the problem is not the impeachment issues. The problem is that the constitutional process from the get-go. So Daktari stood for election as president of this republic.
Yes.
How many people decided to vote or not vote for him based on the qualities that are required, the good qualities of a president? Very few.
Actually, they even said to me, but
Yes.
you are Turkana.
Yeah.
How many are you?
There you go. Thank you very much. So if we were to go, absolutely. So if we were to go to the
And they
Lord,
also say, do you have money?
there you go. There you go. So if our politics is based on that,
Yeah.
then we can't come to Parliament and say, how come you are politicizing this issue? This is the product we have come with. Now, I think if there is one lesson to be learned from this, it is that in the next general election, we should elect our members of Parliament using the parameters of the Katiba, which is that who is fit for purpose, who is the best person for this, not who comes from my community, who comes from my region, who has
Who's
looked at me
aligned with
nicely,
my
who
tribal
look
kingpin.
nice,
Councillor,
ABCD.
you know, someone in whom I hold in such high regard as yourself,
Yes.
I would not want to disagree with you, but I have to. I honestly...
Please do.
I really honestly don't want to disagree with you.
Please do.
And I'm not disagreeing with you
Yes.
because of that what you're saying is actually not desired or
Yes.
it is not true.
Yes.
What you say is what is desired and
Yes.
what is true.
Yes.
In the absence
Yes.
of the citizens of this country
Yes.
understanding their role in holding their leaders accountable,
Yes.
it does not matter whom we elect.
Okay.
We have a tendency in this country that the moment people enter political office, they become rotten before they are ripe.
I again, let me say, for somebody who I hold in high regard, I will disagree with you. because I honestly believe that we have very many good people in this country. Many good people in this country. And I honestly believe people are generally good. So, for example, our biggest problem as a country is graft, right? Corruption, right?
No, it is not. That is a symptom of our problem. Our problem is impunity.
Impunity is as a result of corruption. But anyway, let's speak about corruption. It's a big problem. Let's not say our biggest, let's say it's a big problem.
It's a big problem.
Now, that big problem, almost all banks in this country, literally every branch of a bank in this country has a vault. And 100% of the people who work in those banks are Kenyans. And majority of the people who hold the keys to those vaults are young Kenyans. And they deal in huge mountain loads of cash. And 80-90% of the time, their salary might be 50K and they're holding 50 million and they don't steal 10 shillings. And it's not just one bank. It is one bank after the other after the other. Now, you go to hospital and the people who care for you are nurses. And they don't come from your community. And they earn very little. And they are up in the wee hours of the night cleaning your stuff and all these things. Look, we have very many professionals. We have very many good people. Unfortunately, as a country, we don't give the right people the right jobs. So one of the problems I have with the current administration is that it is as if the current administration has been told, look for the worst person for any job and hire them. Now, seriously, because the opportunity, even if you wanted somebody
You have
loyal,
to be deplorable to be...
even if you wanted somebody loyal, there are so many people who can be loyal and are
good at their
appropriate
job.
and fit for that job. So and as a country, we are blessed with very many good people who are very highly educated. Look, one of the things the 10th Parliament did was to remove the hiring process from the executive and hire for the commissions. And one of the things that used to surprise us nicely was the number of people who are so highly qualified for any particular job. Now, with a country that is that blessed with good people, how do you have the most mediocre people holding the most important posts? And that is where our problem is. You can't have that and then
My
say
respect
on this
for
particular.
you has gone a notch higher. Because you have put forward a very compelling argument for this.
But then I think Abdi is raising even a more fundamental question. So Abdi, then you are raising a very fundamental question. Then what is really the leader? I mean, just like Eric, you interrogate this issue of the letter and the spirit, and I'll come to that very briefly. But I think the question you are raising, Abdi, is very, very fundamental. That it is a leadership question. Can we say today that actually we have a leadership? Because, like they say, fish rots from the head. So if really, I see leadership as a value. It must cascade downwards. If from the very top, like you say, the people who are holding high public offices are actually rotten to the core, then what do you expect down there? If we see corruption in billions and millions of money being stolen at the very top, why do you blame a cop who just takes 50 bob, 100 bob, yet his salary is maybe 20,000, 30,000? We are not justifying this bad. And by the way, I think we should stop using the word corruption, because I don't think in Kisomali or even in Luo
there is no corruption.
There's no word corruption. But if you call somebody a thief, we have given you money to go and build a hospital, and we don't see the hospital, and the money has disappeared. You have stolen. So let's just call it theft, because that's the best way to describe it.
Plunder.
But Eric, to the topic of the day, the letter and the spirit, there are two words we need to distinguish here, and I think we have used it. We have used the word constitutionality, basically the presence of laws, the passage of laws. But what we miss is constitutionalism,
The culture.
the culture, the living that spirit now. When the letter is not clear, what can we lean to? Did we, for example, just want to the fact that the constitution says by due time, let's impeach, but going by how do we want to be seen? Do we believe in our own constitution? Can we modify it in such a way that no, let's not rush this process? Kenya is not in a crisis. We are not at war with another person. Can we preserve the spirit of the constitution? At least let's leave that culture. And I think that's where the problem lies in this country, because then you have got very mediocre people like Abdi. I mean, I'm just quoting Abdikadir, not my word. Very mediocre people in positions of currently.
I stand by.
Currently,
yeah, and and you see, they have no shame on me. They don't apologize at all. So today, I mean, I don't want to mention names, but today the face of leadership in Kenya is some nondescript characters who actually dictate.
We're in a country where people can actually discuss. This person has stolen 5.2 billion shillings in 2 years, and we treat it as casually as
or we extradite the guy of Triton all the way from England only for us to withdraw
to come and kill the case.
Yeah. I mean, it's ridiculous. It doesn't make sense. Then what was DCI?
Actually, it makes sense.
No, it doesn't make sense, because if you look at the process of investigation, so there's a complaint to the DCI. DCI investigates. They gather evidence. They send the file to DPP. DPP, have a look at this file. Do you think we can sustain this charge?
Yes.
DPP say, yes, we can charge that person.
Bring the guy.
Then the guy is charged. He is arraigned in court. He's put in prison. The next application here from DPP, we need time to investigate.
You see, you are rightfully thinking like the clear-minded lawyer that you are.
And a good-hearted Kenyan.
That you are, and an honest, loyal Kenyan that you are. We are not discussing legal matters here. We are discussing the influence of the political system and the politicization of everything that we do, and the poisoned well that our politics is. Because that's what you've just... All these things you're talking about, they are subjected to the law.
But Sidi,
yes, please.
Even politics must operate within the legal framework.
In this country, it doesn't. Because if there's anything that we have seen is how our politicians, it's like they look for an opportunity to disregard the law. President Uhuru set that thing in motion. He set it in motion. When you disregard a court order, what do you think you've set in motion? What do you think you've told everybody else in the country? That's
or
what...
when police enforcers ignore summons.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Then you expect them to enforce a summon against another. Because today, if you are a chicken thief, you'll definitely be in industrial area or committee.
Yes.
But if you steal money, because you see, I think one of the most lucrative businesses in Kenya today is theft of public resources.
It has been for some time.
Yeah.
It didn't start yesterday.
That's why politics is the most lucrative job
Yes.
to look for.
And by then, we are all nomads. Just so that, just to remind the Moi that even nomads can actually.
This is the depth. The people from the farthest corner of this country wrote our constitution. From Mandera north.
From Turkana.
And from Turkana. The Turkana guy was the CEO of the Committee of Experts on
And the
Constitutional
Mandera
Review. And the Mandera guy was in Parliament as the chair
So
of
you
the Select
can
Committee.
see what nomads actually can do for this country, given the opportunity.
Okay, when you come out of the break, we'll now look at, so after the impeachment has happened, the process of appointing a new deputy president.
Okay.
So now, the Constitution says vacancy in the office of the Deputy President, Article 149, within 14 days after a vacancy in the office of the Deputy President arises, the President shall nominate a person to fill the vacancy and the National Assembly shall vote on the nomination within 60 days after receiving it. Let's spend some time here. Okay. So first of all, what is the process of declaring a vacancy in the office of the Deputy President? Who does that?
Okay.
It's already been declared.
Yes. So
Who does it?
So the moment the vote is called by the Speaker of the Senate, the Constitution says there is a vacancy. Then there is
The
communication.
Deputy President shall cease to hold office.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go. Then there's communication to obviously send that information to the President. And there's a gazettement process, which is basically instrumentalism to give notice.
It's already out, actually.
Which is already done. And then the nomination from the President for the replacement and the process of voting by Parliament. And again, if you look, Eric, at 152 on cabinet, just read the appointment of cabinet and how the Constitution deals with it.
Okay. So the cabinet, first of all, how many members?
Yes.
It's the President, the Deputy President, the Attorney General, not fewer than 14, not more than 22.
Yes.
Okay? So a full cabinet is 25.
Yeah.
The President shall nominate and with the approval
Thank you.
of the National Assembly, appoint cabinet
So
secretaries.
that is the difference in the language between 149 and 152 and all the others that require approval.
Okay.
So this is early days in our constitutional development. It is constitutionalism that's getting developed. So if you are to go with the strict black letter of the law, it is that the 149 voting is different from the 152 approval. And the philosophical basis is that the Deputy President's office is elective. It is not necessarily appointive. And appointed officers are vetted. Elections, the assumption is the people vetted you.
Right.
Now, if you were to go to the spirit, as Daktari says, nothing stops
Parliament.
the National Assembly Speaker from saying, even though that is the case, we will still want to go through this other process. But if I was to follow the precedent set by Speaker Wetangula, you remember when he was sent a list of CASs to vet, he was and I think he was right, he was very clear to say, my vetting issues come from the Katiba, and nothing from the Katiba or the law says I should vet this person. So I don't think there's anything wrong if Parliament receives and goes ahead and votes. That is certainly within their limit. Yes.
So let me see if I get it right. We are saying, unlike a couple of weeks ago, when the President nominated ministers who had then to go through a vetting process in Parliament and then a vote of the whole House of Parliament, blah, blah, blah. In this particular case, it says the President shall nominate a person to fill the vacancy and the National Assembly shall vote on the nomination within 60 days.
There you go.
That means the name is just brought to the House.
And they vote.
Then they vote.
Just like
there's no threshold in terms of supermajority.
There is actually a simple majority.
It's a simple majority, of the quorum of the House.
Of the quorum of the House.
So can even be 30 people present, and so long as they get a third, the man is Deputy President. or the woman.
Hey.
But does anybody
Okay.
know who it is?
Yeah, I think my I
Is,
put my
is, there,
prediction
is there a
yesterday.
threshold for this quorum that we speak of?
Yes. There's a requirement. The quorum is right now 50.
50.
Yeah, 50 members well, during my time it used to be 30.
Because you were fewer.
We are fewer, yes.
We had 210
So the
constituencies
quorum
then.
is 50 members.
50 members.
That quorum is
So
low.
kukiwa na watu 51.
But I can assure you, for like last night, you saw the entire Senate was there.
Yeah.
Nobody was ill and nobody had traveled.
Yes.
67 members.
Nobody
All.
fell. Nobody was absent.
Yeah,
Nobody
Everyone
felt
was
absent,
absent.
absent.
Nobody had an absent was absent with an excuse. So then, before this,
Yes.
right, the other argument has been brought
Yes.
into at the point of electing
Yes.
a president and the running mates,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
They go through a process,
Yes.
and there's a vetting process.
Yes.
The vetting process there is
Nomination process.
the nomination process.
Yes.
That they have to go to IEBC, and the IEBC has got to confirm that
Yes.
they qualify
Yes.
to be president and deputy president as
Yes.
set out in the constitution.
Yeah.
You must be only a citizen of Kenya,
Yes.
and you cannot be dual citizen.
Yes.
You must be at a certain age.
Yes.
You must.
No, age is not,
age is not
No. As long as you are an adult,
above 18 is
above
fine.
18 years,
Okay. Then you
must
must
have a degree.
have a degree, yes, and all these other matters of integrity. So the IEBC will, take in from EACC about your integrity and DCI about your integrity. You must never have been convicted and did it for 6 months and above. So the IEBC has to look at all those things before confirming. In this particular case, who checks that? Who checks that the person that President William Ruto nominates does not hold any other passport, for example?
There you go. So number one, first of all, the president and his people are the president's, because they're lawyers at the president's office. You see, the presidency is not just one person.
It's the office.
It's the office.
Right.
And you have the president, and you have his lawyers, and you have the attorney general, and they'll go through this. And I did that work as advisor as the head of that office.
Right.
So that you don't have mediocre things coming out of the president's office. So that is the first. That's the first point of call. So that's the first point of call. And the president and his office will go through that process and confirm that the people we are sending actually meet the criteria.
Okay.
Then it comes to Bunge. Assuming we follow the process that we said, then it comes to Bunge. Bunge has one of the best public service outfits in the country. If you remember yesterday, Speaker Kingi said, "I'm going to retire for 5 minutes."
Yes.
And 10 minutes later, he had a
He
ruling.
came back with a very fully
with a
worded
ruling. So I can assure you, by the time they said we'll come back at 5 p.m., somebody in the back office had decided it could be this or this, what happens, and had a well-argued document ready for the speaker to either agree or it's the speaker's decisions.
Yeah.
But somebody had done that work. So I can assure you they will have gone through that process and said, remember the other day they said we required a 2/3 majority of the county assembly. You were not 2/3. Do you remember that? They actually made a
Yep.
so it is
That was the Kericho governance impeachment process.
So that process, there are many times when the speaker is called upon to decide whether something is constitutional or not.
Right.
So obviously in the debate around the voting, or even before the debate, the speaker will have gone through all this, and the public service behind the scenes would have gone through. So there's quite, and there are lawyers in parliament also. There is the legal setup, or there's a whole branch of public service in terms of. So I have no doubt that if that is the process we're going to go through, it will definitely go through the steps. But you have raised a point which I suspect Dr. will also agree with you on, which is that if we wanted to have a link with the IEBC, would that be a process where we can then ask the IEBC to chime in? And what happens now that there is no IEBC in place? And those are issues that are alive.
Okay.
But I think I think we're trying to make it very seamless so that the succession planning cannot be compromised.
Thank you.
Because I mean, and you can see, we put those timelines, but it's also a risk for a country. When, for example, say you have got one person as a chief executive officer in charge of the country. You remember go back memory lane, when Moi, I think, was president for nearly, is it 1 year?
1 year.
Okay, but at least during that time, there was no question of succession. It was another old constitution. But our new constitution, we are safeguarding the presidency. And I think that's why, I mean, maybe that is a philosophy that's being applied in the Senate, not necessarily with the trial of Gachagua, because I don't agree with that trial. It was completely shambolic. But I think in terms of now succession, they may not want to wait longer. That's why probably a special session of Parliament today is convened to probably discuss. I think already, and it just tells us that this thing of Gachagua was predetermined. Ilisha kitambo, ilienda zamani. So this was predetermined, and I think that's why I think they are rushing it, because I think on the one hand it's probably a good thing that we say law abhors vacuum. So I don't think we need a vacuum in the office of the deputy president if that's the way they want to go, even though the product of the situation currently is questionable, but at least they should be able to fill that office within the shortest time possible. And I'm sure already they have thought of a name. Not even thought, they already have a name.
Okay.
And it's just going to be put into Parliament. It will be rubber stamping. As you know, the current National Assembly is an extension of the president, not even the presidency itself, but the president.
Daktari,
yes.
When Section 2A was repealed, did we know it would take us to where we are today? Had even the most those whose imaginations could run wild and go to perhaps another solar system, had we imagined that when multipartyism came back to Kenya, we would be where we are today?
I think for me, repeal of Section 2A was a very good thing. And I think it probably also now speaks to the current context, where now you've got freedoms of expression. People can call presidents anything they want to do. You have now about almost over 80 political parties in Kenya, and people can ventilate their political ideas whichever way they want without being stifled. I think, for me, it ushered in the way for the current constitutional dispensation.
Yes, it did.
It did. And I think for me, it's a good thing for the country.
That's why
and a lot of African countries, by the way, where Abdi and I have traveled to speak about the constitutional making process, actually they admire Kenya.
Absolutely.
We are very admired. In fact, in terms of our constitutional making process, it's actually like a benchmark in the continent. Absolutely. And people have always said, we want to follow the Kenyan process. How do they do it? How like one of the geniuses of our constitution, city is Chapter 6. That, Kenyans wanted a certain type and character of leaders. Although we don't get it. And in the spirit of the constitution.
But it's there. You see, the reason why I asked the question is because momentous as the promulgation of the constitution was, this process we're discussing is also momentous.
Absolutely.
It is.
Absolutely. And first of all, let me agree with Daktari. Right now, you think this can happen in any other country in the region?
No.
I doubt where this can happen quietly, and the next morning we are discussing so I think we as a country, absolutely, these are things to celebrate. Now, having said that, there's a question you asked.
Except the killing and the abductions of the Gen Zs.
That absolutely.
Yes.
So in terms of the question you asked.
Because again, the spirit of the Constitution.
Yeah. So in terms of the question you asked, the way I thought about it was, there was a man called Olo Aringo. And Olo Aringo, as minister, was guilty of many things. But one of the things, God rest his soul, one of the things he really did was help with the reform of Parliament. He and the, I think, 8th Parliament worked. It was so, Parliament essentially used to be a department of the office of the president. the staff of Parliament used to get paid in OP. The way when the payday comes, you used to cross the road to go to OP to get salary. Paid. Yes. So essentially, Parliament was run out of OP. So there was a lot of effort that went to getting Parliament to be independent. It was really a struggle, and the Section 2A thing was part of that reform process. And people really struggled to have this Parliament have independence. Why I am so pained is that independence that people worked so hard for, now that is constitutionally ingrained from the 11th Parliament, they have just handed it to the executive. At no, absolutely, not even being bought.
They didn't even negotiate.
They didn't even negotiate.
Hata mandizi hawakupewa.
To the point where the chair of a committee, the chair of a committee in parliament is determined in the State House. I mean, when I ran for the committee you talked about, I ran against the current president. My opponent for chair of the PSC, the Parliamentary Select Committee on the Review of the Constitution, was our current president.
Yes.
And it was secret ballot. I got 15 votes, he got 11 votes. Now, that cannot happen in this parliament. There is no way you can run against somebody sanctioned by State House. Now, if you cannot elect the chair of your committee, what else can you do? So that's why there's a big.
This parliament is an appendage of the executive, and particularly I think the president. That's why they can pass any laws. I mean, if you look at, for example, the situation they are putting the country into with the absence of a Finance Act, which is a money collection law, but then they passed a money expenditure law called the Appropriation Act. I mean, so what is so difficult in saying, I think we have heard the views of the people. Can we rectify this bill so that it can now resonate with the people, so that we cultivate that common good? Again, going to the question of the spirit, what is the common good in passing a legislation? What is the common good in enforcing a constitution? So that, because it's the will of the people, and in fact now people are beginning to say, I think it's time we actually amend Article 1 of the Constitution of Kenya, although the spirit was that we will exercise our sovereign authority through our elected representatives, or indirectly, or directly. But now the direct exercise of our sovereign authority is not very clear in the law how we will do it.
Yeah.
Now Kenyans actually calling for an amendment of Article 1, where if we have got a failed regime like this one, or a parliament like the one we have, then let's go to a referendum, we fire all of them. Because the first thing the actually parliament did is to compromise Article 104, the recall clause. That if you're a parliamentarian who goes into slumber, not looking into the issues of your constituency, can we recall you? But the first thing they did, they passed a law that made it almost impossible. Chapter 6, same thing, they killed Chapter 6. So the spirit was killed.
Where I disagree with Kenyans on that is Kenyans want to do revolutions for things they have an opportunity to do in 2 years' time.
Yeah.
Look, if you want to fire members of parliament, you don't have to amend the constitution. You actually generally do that anyway. Most times, 80% of members of parliament get not to come back.
Yep. Yes.
Unfortunately, we bring worse people than the ones we fire.
And the 20% is the same rotten people.
There you go. So next time we go to the
new
election,
ones bad manners.
So the next no. Actually, it's like the backing scheme is that you should be terrible for you to be elected to.
Yes.
So the answer is, at the next general election, let us elect people for the right reasons, and let's elect right people. Because this institution is so critical. It's so critical in the governance of the country. If you get it wrong, everything else flows from there. All senior officials get vetted by this institution.
Yeah.
If you have got how many high office holders other than the current setup now, where really we all know it's how many have been rejected out of vetting, for example?
None. Except that
but there's a problem here.
On Asham,
there is a problem here with everything that we say.
Questions very well.
Was there one lady that was rejected?
Yep. And it's only usually by the way 1 or 2 or 3, and it's only ladies, by the way. It's not even men.
So long as
and in the tourism docket.
So long as it is understood and it is known in this country that wrong at whenever it is enacted in high offices will not be punished. Meaning, once we've embraced and enshrined impunity, and then the way we deal with this is this hypocritical manner in which you go about things. This is my view. Even when we elect those good people, and they get into this very poisoned well, how many times do we ask what happened to so and so?
So many times.
No, how many times do we ask that?
I don't know. I think it's I think it's the water or the tea they drink in there.
Because you must be lazy. They change before your very eyes, and you wonder.
You've said it.
Sure.
It's the 20%. I always keep saying
Yes.
the 80% is not the problem.
Yes, you should.
The 20% that keep coming back,
Right, yeah, those
that
ones.
is the worst.
It is actually
Because
our
they are the
political
orphans.
culture.
You know.
Yes.
I think the problem in this country is that our politics has been so commercialized, and when you have got, say, an executive that believes in just using money and buying people, and maybe it's the bigger picture, Latiff. Maybe we can talk about this another time. When the state of the economy of the country is not accommodating everybody to live in a certain comfortable way, then you create actually a sea of poverty, where now you create actually the slave and master relationship. So you also now create the house Negro, who, because he believes that he works in the house of the master, he's a better slave
Than the field.
than the field Negro.
Yes.
And I think that's actually the situation in our country today. That the people in charge of the country do not want really to create opportunities that can make the people live better wherever. And you see, that is the spirit of devolution. That in devolution, we're supposed actually to devolve services to each and every part of the Republic of Kenya. And if you have traveled this kind of, like some of us have done, imagine there is a very big economic opportunity in all the 47 counties of this Kenya. If you are just to develop an industrial opportunities, you can have a Kikuyu relocating to Mandera or to Lokitang and still live comfortably.
Yep.
But the executive, the leadership, does not want to do that. And that's why you create this state of desperation.
Very well said. Now you've spoken like a party leader.
What do you mean? What do you mean? Like I am?
Now you've brought in.
We know you are, but you've spoken like the leader you are.
Oh, the leader I ought to be.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ekuru Aukot. Your final words in 25 seconds.
Oh, thank you very much. I think it's a momentous occasion. I think there's definitely a lot of things we have not got right, but I think there are a lot of things we have gotten right. I think it's a teachable moment, as they say. I think we should learn from the process and move forward in strengthening our constitutionalism.
Asante sana. Senior Counsel Abdikadir Mohamed, who was the chair of the Constitution Implementation Oversight Committee, and Dr. Ekuru Aukot, who was the CEO of the Committee of Experts.
CEO, COE.
CEO of the COE.
There you go.
Thank you very much for keeping it locked.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.